In February 2026, the fragile peace of the Middle East shatters as geopolitical tensions finally reach a boiling point. The shimmering waters of the Persian Gulf hide a brewing storm that threatens to engulf the entire region in conflict. Deep in the Kuwaiti desert, massive early warning radars scan the darkening horizon for the first signs of an unprecedented attack. At military installations like Camp Bahring, Allied forces brace themselves as intelligence warns of an imminent and massive strategic strike. Inside classified satellite tracking rooms, analysts watch with mounting dread as thermal blooms begin to multiply across the Iranian landscape. Digital maps illuminate with terrifying speed as the command center realizes this is not a drill, but a full-scale assault. Patriot missile batteries elevate their launch tubes into the night sky, their mechanical gears grinding in a desperate race against time. Across Allied air bases, ground crews scramble through thick fog to prepare their interceptor aircraft for the darkest night of their lives. Out on the unpredictable waters of the Gulf, guided missile destroyers stand as the first line of defense against the incoming swarm. Advanced naval radar systems pulse with invisible energy, painting the night sky in a desperate attempt to lock onto the invisible threats. In joint command centers, American and Kuwaiti officers work frantically to organize a layered defense grid before the weapons arrive. Far above the Earth, military satellites transmit chilling real-time data, showing a coordinated multi-domain strike wave heading straight for Kuwait. Supply trucks race across the desert highways, carrying vital interceptor munitions to forward operating bases under the cover of darkness. The fate of millions now rests on the silent orbiting sentinels that track every heat signature moving across the Arabian Peninsula. A heavy, suffocating silence falls over the vast desert dunes, the calm before the most advanced aerial bombardment in modern history. Suddenly, the command bunker erupts into controlled chaos as the main tactical screen flashes a blinding red alert across the room. Cyber warfare specialists frantically type in coordinates, updating the air defense network to face an overwhelming and synchronized technological threat. Heavy concrete blast doors slam shut on underground bunkers, sealing commanders inside to orchestrate the defense of the sovereign airspace. Ground crews risk their lives on the flight line, urgently arming F-18 Hornets with air-to-air missiles beneath the glowing floodlights. The sophisticated Patriot missile systems pivot in the dark, their targeting computers locking onto specific threat quadrants in the eastern sky. Hundreds of miles away in the Iranian desert, heavy transporter vehicles roll into firing positions under strict radio silence. Hydraulic arms slowly raise massive ballistic missiles into vertical launch positions, casting long, ominous shadows across the barren landscape. Camouflage netting is pulled away from hidden launch sites, revealing a staggering arsenal of destructive power, pointed directly at Kuwait. Inside a mobile command vehicle, a gloved hand decisively presses the firing sequence button, initiating a relentless mechanical chain reaction. With a blinding flash of fire, a medium-range ballistic missile violently ignites, sending a massive shockwave across the desert floor. The weapon accelerates rapidly into the upper atmosphere, leaving behind a terrifying pillar of thick smoke and brilliant orange flame. Within seconds, multiple ballistic missiles launch in a synchronized barrage, their fiery trails piercing the darkness of the midnight sky. The launch sites are left scorched and smoking, the immense heat of the rocket engines melting the very sand beneath them. Simultaneously, stealthy launch rails are deployed from the backs of modified transport trucks, revealing rows of deadly delta-wing attack drones. Booster rockets ignite with a harsh spark, catapulting the mechanical predators into the sky to begin their slow, methodical journey. Wave after wave of disposable munitions are launched into the air, creating a terrifying mechanical swarm designed to overwhelm all defenses. The drones fly low to the ground to avoid early radar detection, their dark silhouettes briefly passing over the moonlit terrain. High in the freezing stratosphere, the ballistic missiles follow a parabolic trajectory, moving at supersonic speeds toward their intended targets. Over the dark waters of the Persian Gulf, the massive drone swarm looks like a terrifying migration of glowing lethal fireflies. Back in Kuwait, the Air Defense Command Center becomes a pressure cooker as the massive scale of the attack is finally revealed. The sweeping green lines of the radar screens are quickly overwhelmed by hundreds of hostile tracks pushing toward the maritime border. Military commanders process the overwhelming data, realizing they must execute a flawless defensive strategy to prevent catastrophic infrastructure damage. Warning klaxons echo across the air bases, sending brave fighter pilots sprinting across the tarmac toward their fully fueled tactical aircraft. The massive twin engines of an F-15 Strike Eagle roar to life, producing intense heat waves that blur the surrounding runway. Glowing afterburners ignite with explosive force, propelling the heavy fighter jets down the runway and into the perilous night sky. The interceptors bank hard over the glowing Kuwait city skyline, racing east to meet the incoming swarm before it reaches population centers. Aboard the Allied naval destroyers, the general quarters alarm sounds, sending highly trained sailors rushing to their battle stations. The warships cut aggressively through the heavy waves, positioning their advanced deck guns and missile tubes to shield the coastline. As the drone swarm enters visual range, the ship's powerful searchlights illuminate the dark, triangular wings cutting through the low clouds. On the mainland, the Patriot missile batteries unleash their fury, firing supersonic interceptors with an earth-shattering roar and blinding light. The desert night is instantly transformed into day as dozens of defense systems fire simultaneously in a breathtaking display of power. The defensive missiles climb rapidly through the atmospheric layers, their incredibly bright rocket motors burning hot as they seek their targets. A massive golden fireball erupts in the upper atmosphere as a Patriot interceptor successfully destroys a ballistic threat in midair. From the streets of Kuwait City, the sky looks like an apocalyptic fireworks display, filled with overlapping glowing smoke trails. Shrapnel and mechanical debris rain down harmlessly onto the empty desert dunes, the glowing red-hot metal sizzling as it impacts the sand. Inside the cramped cockpit of a Hornet, the pilot relies on the glowing green head-up display to lock onto multiple hostile targets. With a squeeze of the trigger, a highly advanced air-to-air missile detaches from the wing and streaks forward into the darkness. Miles ahead of the jet, a brilliant flash of white light confirms the destruction of an incoming drone over the open water. Down in the Gulf, the naval destroyer unleashes a vertical barrage of surface-to-air missiles, sending pillars of fire into the clouds. High-speed cameras capture the sheer mechanical violence of the launch, the thick smoke and bright orange glow illuminating the steel deck. The dark maritime sky becomes a chaotic web of overlapping explosions as the naval missiles intercept wave after wave of drones. Flaming debris crashes heavily into the cold ocean, sending massive plumes of white steam rising from the turbulent dark waves. Analysts in the command center monitor the thermal imagery, desperately calculating how many threats have survived the first wave of intercepts. A tactical map reveals that the swarm has split into smaller groups, attempting to flank the defenses and strike critical infrastructure. One group of drones heads straight for a massive oil refinery, its towering smokestacks and complex pipes making it a highly vulnerable target. Ground-based anti-aircraft artillery opens fire, filling the sky above the refinery with a rapid, glowing stream of red tracer bullets. A low-flying drone dives aggressively through the defensive fire, its terrifying delta-wing shape silhouetted against the bright industrial lights. At the last possible second, an interceptor missile strikes the drone, showering the empty industrial perimeter with harmless glowing mechanical sparks. The entire desert horizon flashes continuously with the light of high-altitude interceptions, creating a mesmerizing but deadly documentary landscape. A Patriot canister expels its final defensive missile, thick white smoke pouring from the launcher as it exhausts its immediate ammunition supply. In the radar room, tension spikes as a small cluster of hostile tracks manages to slip past the overlapping defensive missile grid. The surviving drones zero in on a remote and entirely empty concrete logistics bunker located deep within the Camp Buehring perimeter. The bunker is completely obliterated in a massive explosion, the powerful shock wave kicking up tons of sand and shattering the reinforced concrete. Thick black smoke billows into the night sky as flames consume the ruined structure, raining glowing embers over the desolate landscape. Heavily armored military fire trucks rush to the scene, their emergency lights flashing brightly through the dense, smoke-filled desert air. High above the chaos, a stealth F-35 fighter cuts through the smoke, using its advanced sensors to track targets without being seen. Satellite feeds show the entire Arabian Peninsula, dotted with the tiny, brilliant flashes of hundreds of simultaneous aerial missile interceptions. Ground-based radar systems quickly pivot their sleek missile canisters, acquiring fresh targets as the secondary wave of the attack arrives. Advanced defensive missiles blast out of their tubes with a sharp crack, accelerating at incredible speeds toward the scattered drone swarm. The night sky is soon covered in a chaotic but beautiful web of intersecting white smoke trails from the automated defense systems. To avoid the deadly fog of war and automated friendly fire, an F-15 drops a stunning cascade of bright glowing countermeasure flares. Communication lines buzz with heavy static as commanders struggle to differentiate between friendly fighter jets and the relentless hostile swarm. The falling flares illuminate the vast desert floor in a surreal, blinding white light, exposing the raw and terrifying scale of the battlefield. Out over the water, a single stealthy drone flies dangerously low, skimming the ocean waves in a desperate bid to evade radar. The automated close-in weapon system on the destroyer immediately detects the threat, spinning up its massive barrels in a fraction of a second. A deafening roar echoes across the water as the automated gun unleashes a solid stream of red tracer fire into the dark sky. The low-flying drone is instantly shredded to pieces, its mechanical remains exploding spectacularly before crashing into the dark ocean surface. Behind the intense defensive line, the Kuwait city skyline stands tall and completely unharmed, a testament to the success of the shield. From the trenches, soldiers watch in awe as the stratosphere lights up with the continuous silent flashes of hypersonic missile interceptions. The desert floor is littered with spent missile casings, still smoking slightly as they are illuminated by the headlights of passing patrols. Inside the bunker, the harsh red emergency lighting slowly transitions back to a cool blue as the radar screens finally clear. As the sun begins to rise over the Persian Gulf, the Allied naval destroyers return to their patrol formations in the calm waters. The morning sky is hazy with residual cordite and thin smoke trails, creating a stunning visual contrast against the pale sunrise. Convoys of military engineering vehicles drive out into the deep desert, kicking up dust as they move to assess the isolated impact zones. Scorched metal and exposed wires are all that remain of a crashed drone, its shattered wing partially buried in the shifting sand dunes. Firefighters successfully douse the last remaining flames of the destroyed bunker, sending thick clouds of white steam rising into the morning air. Back at the air bases, rows of fighter jets sit safely on the tarmac, undergoing rigorous inspections by exhausted but relieved ground crews. The Kuwaiti flag waves proudly in the morning breeze, a powerful symbol of resilience standing before the pristine, untouched city skyline. Post-action 3D graphical maps reveal the sheer density of the attack, showing hundreds of intercepted flight paths terminating at the border. Logistics teams work tirelessly in the daylight, using heavy cranes to rapidly replace the empty Patriot missile canisters with fresh interceptors. A newly armed F-18 Hornet takes off into the clear blue sky, embarking on a critical combat patrol to ensure the region remains secure. Out on the water, the Allied naval fleet sails in a strong defensive formation, projecting a formidable military presence under the bright sun. Inside a sunlit briefing room, military commanders gather around satellite maps to analyze the unprecedented effectiveness of the overnight defensive operations. Aerial drones capture footage of the vast desert, revealing the massive scorch marks and scattered debris left by the intense aerial battles. High above the clouds, American and Kuwaiti fighter jets fly side by side in close formation. demonstrating an unbreakable Allied military bond. Despite the dawn, heavily armed guards maintain strict watch outside the fortified underground bunker complexes, knowing the threat may not be over. The massive exhaust nozzle of a jet engine erupts with a blinding blast of blue and orange flame as patrols continue around the clock. The sprawling oil fields of Kuwait continue to pump rhythmically, highly vulnerable strategic targets that demand constant and unwavering military protection. In mobile command tents, tactical radios buzz continuously as frontline commanders coordinate the massive logistical effort required to rearm the defense grid. The fading moon is briefly obscured by the lingering smoke trails, a stark reminder of the violent clash between modern technology and nature. Military fuel trucks speed down the desert highways, executing urgent logistical supply runs to keep the air defense units fully operational. Intelligence suddenly detects a secondary threat as a coastal battery launches a stealthy, low-flying cruise missile designed to evade conventional radar. The cruise missile skims just feet above the waters of the Persian Gulf, leaving a faint, terrifying wake as it speeds toward the coastline. High above the battle space, radar operators inside an AWACS command aircraft track the stealthy weapon through the clutter of the ocean surface. The massive rotating radar dome of the AWACS aircraft continues its endless vigil, serving as the ultimate eye in the sky for Allied forces. Guided by the airborne radar, an Allied fighter jet fires a long-range air-to-air missile, sending a streak of light across the frame. The cruise missile is successfully destroyed over the open water, erupting in a spectacular fireball that briefly illuminates the dark ocean waves. Back on land, the hydraulic systems of a Patriot launcher strain heavily as the unit pivots to engage a newly detected cluster of drones. Military police establish urgent roadblocks on the desert highways, using flashing lights to divert civilian traffic away from potential falling debris zones. On the deck of a destroyer, vertical launch system doors pop open with a burst of pressurized gas, signaling another imminent missile launch. An advanced interceptor missile erupts from the ship, the immense force of the rocket motor pushing the massive vessel slightly in the water. An intercepted drone spirals violently out of control, its wing torn off as it plummets toward the desert floor, trailing thick black smoke. The drone crashes into a massive, isolated sand dune, detonating in a huge explosion of sand and fire far away from any civilization. To neutralize suspected launch sites, an Allied fighter jet smoothly releases a precision-guided munition onto a confirmed empty desert target. The shock waves from distant, high-altitude interceptions kick up massive dust clouds, forcing ground troops to brace against the gritty desert wind. Through the glowing green lens of night vision goggles, soldiers watch the terrifyingly beautiful display of missile streaks crossing the dark sky. The dark waters of the Gulf reflect the sudden, violent flashes of naval anti-aircraft fire protecting the brightly lit coastline of Kuwait. Deep inside the destroyer, damage control teams rush through narrow steel corridors, prepared to respond instantly to any breach of the hull. High in the atmosphere, the glowing exhaust plume of a re-entering ballistic warhead looks like a terrifying man-made meteor streaking toward the Earth. A massive terminal high-altitude area defense interceptor launches from the desert, accelerating straight up on a pillar of pure white fire. On the very edge of space, the interceptor collides with the warhead in a silent, blinding flash, dispersing the threat into glowing plasma. The beautiful but eerie plasma clouds slowly dissipate in the upper atmosphere, illuminated by moonlight like a strange, artificial aurora borealis. Spotlights sweep the sky above the heavily fortified Ministry of Defense, where leaders realize their air defense network has performed a miracle. A lingering swarm of drones attempts to hide within a thick layer of clouds, their dark, ominous shapes drifting silently through the mist. Automated defense cannons spool up their rotating barrels, unleashing a torrential stream of glowing red explosive rounds into the low-flying swarm. The sky fills with thousands of tiny, deadly explosions, creating an impenetrable wall of flak that completely shreds the incoming mechanical threats. A flaming piece of metallic debris crashes into the chain-link perimeter fence of the base, sparking intensely before burning out in the sand. During a high-G evasive maneuver, a fighter pilot breathes heavily into his oxygen mask, experiencing the extreme physical toll of modern aerial combat. The pilot pulls the jet sharply up into the sky, effortlessly dodging a falling piece of debris as his vapor trails glow brightly. Inside the command center, a wave of profound relief washes over the room as the final red hostile tracks disappear from the tactical maps. Exhausted radar operators stare at the blank, secure screens, the crushing tension finally leaving their bodies after hours of relentless technological warfare. The heavy steel blast doors of the command bunker slowly groan open, allowing the first comforting rays of morning sunlight to pierce the darkness. A weary soldier steps out into the warm sun, holding his helmet, representing the remarkable human endurance required to survive the modern battlefield. Military recovery teams methodically sweep the desert with metal detectors, mapping the scattered fragments of intercepted weapons buried deep in the dunes. A scorched circuit board lying in the sand serves as a chilling reminder of the highly advanced automated technology that drove the attack. As dawn breaks fully, a massive logistics convoy leaves the base, hundreds of armored vehicles projecting an unbroken display of Allied military strength. Ground crews carefully wash the soot and grime from a parked fighter jet, the morning sunlight reflecting off its clean, wet glass canopy. The Persian Gulf is perfectly calm once again, protected by the formidable and unwavering presence of the Allied naval destroyer fleet. Traffic slowly returns to the highways of Kuwait City, the citizens waking up to a metropolis saved entirely by the invisible protective shield. Heavily scorched and completely empty missile canisters stand in the desert, a silent visual testament to the sheer volume of defensive firepower expended. Allied pilots walk together across the tarmac, carrying their helmets and sharing the quiet, exhausted camaraderie known only to those who face combat. A massive military cargo plane touches down on the runway, bringing in critical supplies and replacement munitions to ensure the shield remains strong. The radar dish continues its endless rhythmic spinning against the clear blue sky, remaining forever vigilant over the skies of the Middle East. Deep in the vast empty dunes, a single jagged piece of metal debris gleams harmlessly in the sun, a fading scar of the battle. Kuwait stands triumphant and completely intact, having weathered the storm of the century and proving the incredible power of modern defensive warfare